Hello everyone, this is the SkyZone S140. Featuring an F3 flight controller with an OSD, 20 amp 4-in-1 ESC, Foxeer micro CCD camera, it's not the Predator, 1506 4100 kV motors, a power switchable VTX goes all the way up to 200 milliwatt, 3032 dial propellers, XC30 free battery connection, has a battery pad, does appear to be 140 millimeters, bottom plate is 3 millimeters, top plate is 1.5 millimeters, the aluminum pod looks to be 4 millimeters by about 3 millimeters, it weighs 134.4 grams, comes with a camera OSD controller, a 3-panel instruction sheet, and a pretty nice SkyZone box. I flew it primarily with these batteries. So this machine has all sorts of power. You know, we've got some large stator on these motors, and they're fairly high kV at 4100 kV, and they look pretty nice, and they've got this thing nice and color coordinated. We've got blue props and a blue camera. Not that color means everything. I was not a fan of the fact that they did not do anything. They chose a VTX that didn't fit on the stack, and it does look like there was room on the stack. I think camera angle would have been limited by adding the VTX, but I would have liked to have seen this secured somehow out of the factory rather than just kind of loosely sitting there. You can see that I created my own little stack with my my receiver and my VTX. Just use some double-sided sticky tape. If they're going to pick a receiver, at least pick one that the antenna comes off centered, because the hole's in the center. This one comes off here on the far side, so you have a fair bit of your VTX kind of dangling out here over the edge. It's not a big deal. I didn't have any problems with it coming loose or anything like that. I do think this is going to be a hardy machine. I don't think it's going to be something that's going to break very easily. It feels very rigid, very stiff. It does have the chamfering going on the top and the bottom of the frame. It's nice and smooth. The gummy pad I thought was kind of worthless. I really, even when you lick it and spit on it and, you know, get it all to where it should be sticky, it really wasn't very sticky. It's nicely cut, but there's better gummy pads out there. So you might, if you have a problem with keeping your battery in there, you might think about getting a different gummy pad. I also think they cut the holes wrong. I think they should have made these holes a little deeper so we could have got some strain relief for our battery lead. Our battery lead is also a little bit short for at least how I like to secure my batteries, because it's fairly rigid, well beyond the XT30. Bending things around and getting your battery just where you want, because I don't like things flopping around. I like to have everything secured down pretty tightly. That was a little bit of a con, and we could have, you know, you can zip tie this to one of these posts or to an arm if you want to, and create some strain relief. I just thought they were so close to giving us strain relief right here with these cuts. They just move these things back a couple of millimeters, and you could probably even use those, just create a little, well, we've got that connector down there, but you could bend these back a little bit like this and maybe catch them down in there if you wanted to get creative. So that's a solution. If you didn't want to do your VTX with double-sided sticky tape, you could also use a zip tie around through this gap to secure it up through here. The camera's nice. I like the camera. The sky is a little bit of a funny color in the camera, but you can always tweak that out to your liking. The props are kind of, you know, last year or maybe even beyond, and I was disappointed in the performance, and I think that stems mainly from the props. I think they're a bit too flexible, and they have a tendency to flatten out. So most of your thrust is coming from the inner part of the prop as it really gets up to higher RPMs, because this is the end. Now, my understanding is that the prop end supplies a good portion of the thrust, and as that flattens out, then you kind of lose some of your thrust. I mean, it still has good thrust, it's just not great. And speaking of props, getting these props on was an absolute nightmare. And that's kind of a big con for me on this particular model. You can see on this rear one, it was so difficult to get on that the nylon that used for the locking mechanism stuck to the motor stem. The motor stems seem to be just, you know, a fraction or a tiny bit too big, and getting the props on, you pretty much get them on the threaded part. You get a tiny bit of thread sticking out, then you get your nut on, and then you screw it on. And it was difficult enough where I had to get my jar opening pad so that I could get a grip on the motor enough to where then I could get my tool and screw that on. And it took a good, I'd say it'd take me 25 minutes to get all 4 props on. And that's going to sound ridiculous. I didn't time it, but I actually had to take breaks because it was such a physical struggle of getting the props secured down. And then I kind of felt like I didn't know whether the prop was all the way down or not, because it was such a struggle to get on. Maybe that's a trick. Maybe this ridiculous thing doesn't need prop nuts. I'm kidding there, of course. But that's a pretty big con, because I actually would have probably tried different props, maybe some of the new Cyclones or some of the new Gem Fans. I couldn't be bothered because it was enough of a challenge just getting these props on, so I flew it like it was. If you've got one of these, I do think you'll be happy with different props. It does come with a tune. I didn't think the tune was very good. I'm wondering if it was a guess or they actually had a pilot fly it. The D term was too high. These are very notchy motors, so we have to turn our Ds way down, and you'll see on screen my PIDs. This is also running Betaflight 3.1.7, so a little bit of an older version of Betaflight. You may choose to upgrade that as well. Pretty simple procedure, really, if your computer doesn't have any problems connecting to the flight controller. If you have troubles flashing any board, I always recommend using the NickburnsRC driver fixer. Just Google that, download it, let that run when you've got it plugged in, and that should fix you right up for flashing. Of course, you can always type DFU if you're in a pre-3.2, or if you're on 3.2 or above, you can type BL in the command line, and it will also take you into DFU mode. I think for the price point, they could also give us a better battery strap, something with a buckle on it. I would appreciate that. These things can't be more than a couple of pennies. I don't want to sound like I complain too much. It's not a bad machine. I just think at $214, it's a little bit pricey, and I think we can do better. The HGLRC XJB145 I think is better, but it's different because this is a true X and that one is a stretched X, so you have more prop in view in the other one. But that's something that you have to weigh. I've got another one with these motors. I forget its name. I haven't flown it yet. And putting props, which were the gem fan props, were a problem for me as well on that one. So hopefully that flies well with those props, because I don't think I'm going to spend 20 or 30 minutes getting more props off and on. I think if you have one of these, or you have a machine that the motor stem is just a tiny bit too big and you have problems getting props off, if you have a hair dryer or a heat gun, that might help to loosen up the plastics of the nut. Of course, you want to be careful. You don't want to get the windings too hot, because then you'll end up with trouble there. But warming these things up will help get them off, hopefully. I've had to do that before on other machines. Also, batteries. As I did in the pre-roll, I flew with these two batteries. These are some new batteries for me. They're from Newbie Drone. They have the detachable balance lead, which that's super cool. We can leave that weight behind. But unfortunately, I felt like these packs were really way too heavy. Just looking at the size, there's a substantial difference between these two packs in size. And this is a 650. A tattoo, of course. So it's not that I recommend against these. I just think it's one of those things you have to balance. And yeah, I flew it mainly with the 650s, but I would take the 550s as kind of my warm-up packs, and I would fly those around first, and then I would switch over to the 650s when I was getting more serious. Air quotes, don't you love that? I think there are other good batteries out there you could possibly try, but I just wanted to give you that touch of information, because when I bought these, I was kind of surprised by the size. I think if you're interested in this machine and you liked how it flew in the video, and you would like to try it because you like the motors, or if something catches your eye, I kind of always say this: if something catches your eye, don't worry about it being the best. I think if you like it, if you like what you've seen on this review and other reviews, I think you should kind of give that confirmation bias of your own eye and buy what you like. If you ask me if it's the best, I always say, well, best depends. Best for your money or best performance, because those are two different things, and I can't necessarily judge how much or how willing you are to separate with your money. I do think you won't be disappointed. It's not a bad machine. It flies pretty well. It's got great punch. It's got good weight. You can throw it up over stuff, as I just did with the house. You can do punch outs and get your nose down so you can see that you're still moving away from the objects. I think if you want to learn more freestyle flying, or you're already an accomplished freestyle pilot, you can use this and it will perform well. It's just these few little tiny things that kind of bother me. I think it needs to be updated, the Betaflight version. I think the VTX at least should have a center antenna rather than one that's clear off to the side. I think that the motors of choice, not that these are bad performing motors, but the stems are just so dang tight that changing out props is going to be a pain. And the rear lead, which we can also change out ourselves, should be a little bit longer, I think. So I'm complaining a lot, but I'm trying to let you know that those are the things I would change if I were building this machine. If you like the machine, I think you should buy it. If you like the looks of it, or the layout, or the parts and components that are used, I say go for it. I'll leave a link down in the description if you want to check it out. Last I looked, it was running about $215. It does come with a nice case. It's a little bit surprising to see SkyZone, the goggle maker, getting into making quads as well, but more competition is only good for us, right? And no, it doesn't really fit in the case with props on either. All right, if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, leave those in the section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.